KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Harden thought about that three. He's got Looney on a switch. This is almost a must-stop for the Warriors. Howell down the lane to put it up and in. He's been the man in the fourth quarter. Steph, and they shut him out in the fourth quarter from the field. And that does not normally happen. Kawhi does not need to shoot. The Clippers, 2-1 against the Warriors in 3 games in 14 days. And LA has won 6 in a row and 11 of their last 14.
Yeah, not enough stops for the Warriors in this one. A valiant comeback attempt as Golden State did rally from 16 down, cut it to a 1-point game in the fourth quarter with 8:51 to go. But then it was too much Norm Powell, too much James Harden, too much Kawhi Leonard, too much Amir Coffey as the Clippers beat the Warriors 121-113. We welcome you in here to Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson on KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR is the number. 808 KNBR, the phone number to give me a call or shoot me a text here on the sports leader as the Warriors fall again now to 10-14. They lose each of the 3 games on this road trip. The tough luck loss at Oklahoma City late, and then the Warriors find themselves also losing in Phoenix, and then losing this one tonight against the Clippers. So the Warriors now have dropped 7 consecutive games away from home and just trying to get back on track. Lineup changes for Golden State. Life after the Draymond Green suspension for the Warriors. Klay Thompson poured in 16 of his 30 in the third quarter to help the Warriors rally and climb back into the game, but just not enough stops and not making the most of a great Klay Thompson game as he ends up with 30 points, his first 30-point game of the season. And the Warriors had a nice floor game from Brandon Podziemski. Jonathan Kuminga did some things. Chris Paul, I thought, played pretty well off the bench. Moses Moody gave the Warriors a lift. But it winds up being too much of those players that I mentioned for the Clippers, and they prevail in this one. So the Clippers and Warriors just going in opposite directions at this particular point in time, with Golden State now losing again, and the Clippers boosting to a big-time win. And the Clippers have won 6 in a row. The Clippers have really turned their season around, going all the way back to the last time these two teams met, going back to December the 2nd in Los Angeles, 12 nights ago, or in that afternoon game on the Saturday. And the Clippers won that one, stole that one from the Warriors after the Dubs had a 22-point lead. But then they've been able to use that to propel themselves up to a 14-10 record. So 2 teams going in opposite directions as the Warriors now find themselves again trying to search for answers following a tough defeat. So appreciate everybody watching on the YouTube and Twitch stream as well. We will hear from Steve Kerr. We will hear from players in the Warriors locker room following this one as Golden State loses 121-113 to the Clippers. So 808 KNBR, the number, 808 KNBR, it's Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson here on The Sports Leader. Just kind of running through some of the notes from this one and some of my notes from this one. You look at the lineup changes for Golden State. What would Steve Kerr do? And you knew he was going to do something. And it was twofold. Andrew Wiggins found his way out of the starting lineup. The Warriors rolled with what was their 10th different starting lineup this season. Jonathan Kuminga making his second start. So Kuminga went in for Draymond. Kevon Looney remained in the starting lineup to play at center. And then Brandon Podziemski, who's played well of late, he went into the starting lineup at the 2 with Klay Thompson moving to the 3. So it was Steph with Podziemski, Klay Thompson, Jonathan Kuminga at the 4, and then Kevon Looney at the 5. No Paul George in this one for the Clippers, and Klay Thompson came out hot. Scored the first 8, and the Warriors were up 8-0. But then the Clippers would go on a 10-3 run. They were up 18-14. It ended up being a 13-2 run before the Warriors would end up on a run to grab the lead back. But really the reason the Warriors were trailing at the end of the first quarter, 29-28, was 5 turnovers that led to 9 Clippers points. The Clippers were getting to the free throw line and making hay there. And it was just too many turnovers really in the first half overall, too many free throws for the Clippers in the first half overall. Those things did get cut down in the second half, and the Warriors did a nice job, and that with some hotter shooting from Klay Thompson allowed Golden State to get back into the game. But James Harden started taking things over in the second quarter, and the Warriors found themselves down as many as 12. Jonathan Kuminga had a nice hot stretch toward the end of the second quarter to help keep the Warriors in it. But then foul trouble for both Jonathan Kuminga and Steph Curry, and the Warriors found themselves down 13 at the half. Again, a lot of Kawhi Leonard, a lot of James Harden getting to the free throw line and knocking down the three ball as the Warriors found themselves in a hole that it really didn't appear they were going to be able to dig their way out of. But that's when Klay Thompson started rolling in the third quarter, 4 of 5 from three-point range. He ends up with 16 points in the quarter, and the Warriors were able to cut into the lead, and it was a 37-30 third quarter advantage for the Warriors, but it could have been more if the Warriors had gotten a stop. They did have a late flurry to wind up putting themselves in position going to the fourth quarter with the Chris Paul 3 at the buzzer. That capped a little mini run to make it 99-93 going to the fourth quarter. But then the Warriors were able to cut it further down to 103-102, and there were just some key sequences in the fourth quarter. Warriors got it down to 103-102. Offensive rebounds helping the Warriors' cause. Chris Paul hit a bucket that made it 103-102 with 8:51 to go, and then the Warriors went cold for about a 2+ minute stretch, and the lead was pushed right back up to 108-102, eventually 109-102, and the Warriors did get a couple of stops during that stretch, but they just couldn't score. And then if you want to talk about lineup decisions, and we can get into the starting lineup changes at 808 KNBR for the Warriors, but also the closing lineup decision. I mean, Steve Kerr has discussed it so many different times that he thought that the closing lineups are going to be tough to decide. And so when you look at it, as far as the closing lineups, it looked like it was going to be Steph Curry, Brandon Podziemski, Klay Thompson, Jonathan Kuminga, and Kevon Looney. I thought there was an opportunity, and those were the new starters for this game tonight. I thought there was an opportunity to get Moses Moody back into the game for somebody, but again, the question becomes for who? If Moody's going to come in, he's probably if he's going to come in, he's probably coming in for Podziemski or Kuminga. And Kuminga, I thought, had played well enough despite the foul trouble to be able to be out there at the end of the game. I don't think you're putting Moody in there and playing Kuminga at the 5 when the Warriors are already woefully small in some of their lineups, even when they do have Kevon Looney on the floor. So I think that wasn't really a legitimate option. And then, Podziemski, who did a lot of things really well in this game, the one thing that Podziemski couldn't do well in this game was make a shot. He ends up 2 of 11 and 0 of 3 from three-point range, but he's taking charges and he's rebounding and he's hustling around and 3 steals, and he played a really good floor game, but just couldn't hit a shot. And tonight was a night where he had multiple opportunities to where if he could have got a bucket, maybe this thing flips in the Warriors' favor once they get it close as they did in the lead up to heading down the stretch. And so what would Steve Kerr do? Would Podziemski end up being the odd man out? Possibly for Moody. It wasn't Moody at all. It wound up being Chris Paul who went back into the game, and Chris Paul played a pretty good game overall. And Steve Kerr has been on record as saying he wants Chris Paul out there in close games because of the leadership and the ability to get everybody set in the right positions. And I think he probably wanted that even more so based on the fact that the Warriors are playing more younger players here, with the suspension to Draymond Green and with Andrew Wiggins basically being benched and knocked down to a 20 to 22 minute per game type of a player. So unfortunately, it's one of those nights where you can't really please everybody. And I know a lot of Warrior fans are really frustrated right now because this team's not winning. And I was having a few back and forths on social media with Warrior fans tonight, and it's just they're so quick to just want to see the young player above everybody. It's just the moment anything goes wrong, it's young players, young players, young players, Steph and the young players. Tonight, Klay Thompson was kind of one of those vintage throwback Klay type of games, 8 of 12 from 3. So Klay wasn't in the line of anybody's wrath as far as Warrior fans go in this one tonight. But it becomes this case of there's always a young player or two that Warrior fans want on the floor when things don't go well. But again, if there was somebody that got left out of the mix tonight, it was Moody. But I'd be hard-pressed to say who shouldn't have been out there, again, unless you're going to play Kuminga at the 5, which I don't think the Warriors are going to do. So add it all up, not enough stops, too many free throws, too many first-half turnovers. And the Warriors still did the job off the bench, even with the new-look bench, 39-36. The Clippers did hit the Warriors in the paint, although the Warriors did hold their own in the paint, 48-40 the advantage for the Clippers. And so we'll see how things shake out for the Warriors moving forward, because they are up against it now in a big-time way at 10-14 and drifting fast right now in the Western Conference as you look at the way things stack up. And look, it's only 24 games, a lot of games to go, a lot of home games for the Warriors coming up. But when you start, this team's on the outside looking in. And right now the Warriors, and this is just reality, because they're going to be playing this indefinite amount of games without Draymond Green as he works through the suspension. That the Warriors are not better for that. And so while it is an opportunity for young players to get more run and to try and develop, this team's now lost 3 consecutive games and 7 in a row on the road, and they are closer right now to being the Utah Jazz or the Memphis Grizzlies than they are to being the Phoenix Suns, who are currently the 10th and final team in the play-in tournament at 13-11. That's just a harsh reality, and now this team that's basically got an even point differential at 115.5 scored and 115.5 allowed is going to have to find a way to win some games with a lot of home games coming up and a lot of games against so-called easier opponents coming up, with some really difficult opponents also mixed in here over the course of the next 4 weeks. So a lot to chew on. 808 KNBR is the number. 808 KNBR. It's John Dickinson, Dubs OT with JD. We do this each and every night following Warriors basketball here on the Sports Leader, as the Warriors find themselves losing this one by that final count tonight of 121-113, and Golden State finds themselves at 10-14 on the season as they'll head home to take on Brooklyn coming up on Saturday, which gets a whole new stretch ready to roll here for the Warriors. All right, 808 KNBR. We'll go ahead and pause. We'll come back, and John Lund is going to join me. Lund, of course, Lund and Papa here on the Sports Leader, 10-2. And so he's going to join me. We'll get a couple of his quick takes on this one. 808 KNBR is the number. We'll get to the YouTube and Twitch chat. We will get to the text line as well, as you are listening to Dubs OT with John Dickinson on 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Dubs OT with John Dickinson continues. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Klay Thompson, Jonathan Kuminga, and Kevon Looney. And Klay opens with a three right on cue.
That's a great start for him. A little flare screen there. Defenders fighting over the top. Go ahead and pump fake. You get wide open.
Run Klay off the line. Fading mid-range off iron. Looney has been a rebounding machine early. Klay on a reload and bottoms that.
And one.
So he hits the jumper and is fouled at the same time, and it's all these extra opportunities courtesy of Kevon Looney. Oh, how did Klay make that one? You got to be kidding me.
He's unconscious.
He's 7 of 9 on threes. He's got 27 in the game.
They're going to start hitting him off of those screens now, sending two defenders at him.
There's a long way to go in this game if the Clippers would cool off.
16-point third quarter for Klay Thompson. First 30-point game of the season for Klay. But it's not enough. Warriors fall in L.A. Clippers beat the Dubs 121-113. It's Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson, here on the Sports Leader. 808 KNBR is the number to give me a call or shoot me a text here as the Warriors make lineup changes. Looks like Steve Kerr's going to stick with the young guys. No Draymond Green as his latest suspension begins, and the Warriors do some things well, but not enough stops, too many fouls and turnovers early, and it all adds up to another loss. Their 7th in a row away from Chase Center. They'll be back in action on Saturday night. All right, let's bring in the great John Lund. Of course, Papa and Lund here on KNBR, the Sports Leader, 10 to 2. Monday through Friday. Lund, what's going on, my man?
Hey.
Never a dull moment with the Warriors, and a lot of exciting moments today and tonight, but another loss.
Yeah, and you hit it. What they're doing is they're having to come from behind so much in the first half with 10 turnovers, 13-4, so they're -9 there. The free throws, James Harden's just going to do that. Pajemski's going to learn. In the first half, he just knows how to draw them, and he outshot the Warriors himself from the free throw line. He was 9 for 9 in the first half. Miraculously enough, they go into the third quarter, they stop fouling, they stop turning it over, and they get back in the basketball game. And you know, look, their margin for error is already thin because they're getting older. And then Draymond Green's out of the lineup. It's even thinner than that. And then when it comes to the Clippers and Ty Lue, and more so because of Kawhi Leonard, they know how to shut down Steph Curry, and in the fourth quarter, not for a long period of time, but in the fourth quarter they did. And so you have that momentum going into the fourth quarter. As you said, you bring it to 103-102 with 8:51 with that 16-4 run, and you can't finish it off because the only guys that you can rely on this team tonight, it was Klay Thompson, but Steph Curry didn't hit a shot in the fourth quarter. And so it's usually Steph scoring the 30, and then there's no Robin to his Batman. And tonight it was Klay Thompson, but he ran at gas. As you said, he had the 27, he had the 4 or 5 from 3. Through 3 quarters and was absolutely stinking red hot, and then in the fourth quarter he just can't recreate it. Once he hit the bench, he couldn't come back and do it. So, look, they've got a very thin margin of error. We are now 24 games into the season. They're 10-14, and they're tweaking with everything. They're tweaking with starting lineups, rotations, finishing lineups. I mean, that's just not what you do. I mean, that's what a bad team does because they can't figure anything out. But through injuries, suspensions, being old, being too young. I mean, it's all these different things, and like you said, the hope, if you're a Warriors fan, has to be that these easier games and being at home will be the great elixir, because so far I think they're 5-15 versus plus 500 teams. I know Fitz throughout the game on TV was talking about how, you know, the close games, and what are they, 9-10, something like that, whatever they are. So they're not playing well at the end of games, and we can make all the excuses of who they've played in Oklahoma City and the Clippers. But you know, when you start hearing that kind of stuff, it's a loser mentality, because we're talking about the Warriors. And if I'm Joe Lacob and I'm spending $400 million on this roster in taxes and salary, I don't want to hear that the Clippers and OKC and Minnesota and all these other teams are better than me. I'm paying the most money in North American sports history. I'm not doing it for a 500 team who, by the way, is not even 500 and sits at 11th in the West. So
I mean,
I
they're closer
just
to
went on a
being
rant.
Utah.
But Yeah.
They're closer to being Utah right now than they are to being a play-in team.
Well, if we could flash the standings up here, where they are, it's kind of like who you hang out with, right? In high school, the cool kids. Well, they're at the top. They're hanging out, like you said. If you look at the standings and they make those lines, you're not even in the play-in game. You're hanging with Portland, the Grizzlies,
Memphis,
Utah. I mean, that San Antonio with their losing streak. I mean, those are your friends. You're not even in the play-in game. So, it's tough. Now, again, to just spin it in one positive way, and they're just going to have to learn this, JD, and you know this. They're going to have to learn to win without Draymond Green because the cavalry's not coming. I know we're going to talk a ton about Clay, but, again, it's spun a certain way when Clay gets 30, and I'm not down on Clay. It's just that Clay's 33 years old coming off 2 major injuries. He can score 30 every once in a while, but this is Clay scoring 30. This is what he did. I mean, Clay with Draymond out in the past could carry you. You could win a game if Clay was this hot normally, but he's not going to score 30 every night. That's the problem because that's not where he is in his career.
Well, and now they've lost Klay Thompson's best game of the season, and they also lost Andrew Wiggins' best game of the season. So the two guys that everybody's been talking about almost every single night who haven't been there for them and have struggled, and there's been these nights where Steph is doing his thing and they're getting contributions from the bench, and they're just looking for anybody to be the number 2 or the 2 and the 3 along with Steph, and they can't find it. But then the one night Wiggins finally has a big game, they allow Chet Holmgren to hit a 3 and then get run out in overtime at Chase. And now tonight, Klay Thompson has a 30-point game, and the Warriors end up losing both of those games. And so because of what you said and the fact that those games are going to be fewer and farther between for Klay Thompson, you got to win them. And that goes back to the whole margin for error issue. You got to win them because the reality is probably in the next 8 or 10 games, it's going to be about like what the last 8 or 10 games has been for Klay Thompson. A couple of good ones, maybe one great one, and a whole lot of mediocre and a couple of bad ones. And so this team just is not maximizing the things that the nights where things do go well. And there's just, one night it's one thing, another night it's another thing, and it's sort of different. They just can't get enough consistency from the right guys on the right nights. But the one thing I will say that keeps popping up every night is the fouls and the turnovers. And look, they cut it out in the second half, but in the first half, they fouled too much. And really in the first quarter, I mean, the fact that the Warriors were down 1 at the end of the first quarter was, they should have been up 6-8, and they were down 1 because the Clippers scored 9 points off of 5 turnovers and got to the free throw line 10 times. And that sets the tone for when the Clippers actually do get their act together and start playing better, as they did in the second quarter, you find yourself in an uphill climb, and it's just too much to ask for this team to be able to rally from it. And I thought that the other telling factor in this thing was the third quarter. Klay Thompson goes for 16. He's white hot. And basically the Warriors are still down double digits for a good chunk of that up until the final little stretch where Chris Paul hit the buzzer beater. So they just are not taking advantage of stretches that they used to take advantage of and go on big runs and basically end games.
Yeah, and let's go back to the turnovers and the fouls. And I don't know how many times Steve Kerr has to say it, and you're in those post-game press conferences. I mean, when he gets asked the question, he's exasperated and he doesn't know what to say. And this isn't this year or last year. It's every year, even when they were winning championships. And they kind of, and from the turnover standpoint, they were so good that they were like the Harlem Globetrotters. We'll beat the Washington Generals, so let's just throw it all over the court. And they've never gotten over that. So the fact that in the second half they could, you look at it 2 different ways. It would piss you off as a Warriors fan to go, see, you can do it. Like, you don't have to turn the ball over if you focus and you concentrate. And so they get so loose with it, they get in a hole. I'm sure Steve Kerr is on the side going, stop the turnovers, stop the turnovers. Okay, they stop the turnovers. But then it's a parade to the free throw line, and James Harden is number 1 in the league. I hate watching James Harden play. I got nothing personal against him. It's just that's his game. He's trying to do that. And, JD, imagine the grease board before the game, what it says. A lot of, probably of the 5 bullet points that Steve Kerr puts up, probably 3 are don't foul James Harden. They know exactly. When he would get Pajemski on him, he was just like, are you kidding me? You're putting this guy on me? That's what's going to happen. So they put themselves in a hole. They fight back. They got beat 40-28 in the second quarter. They play this great third quarter. But as you pointed out, now they're too old, they're too tired. They're too young and they're too old at the same time. So and what does that mean? It means inconsistency, like you're talking about. Klay Thompson's a great player, and he can do that every once in a while, but you can't lay it on the feet of Steph Curry every single night. And now without Draymond Green, who will consistently give you that? So you made that push. Now you're gassed at the end of the third quarter. Do you have enough to beat the Clippers in the fourth? Well, not when Ty Lue says, hey, go sick him, Kawhi Leonard, because Steph's got nothing left now. He's had to carry the team the whole time, and you can't criticize Steph Curry, even though he had 17 tonight, because Kawhi's on him, and the Clippers are saying someone else beat us because we know that Klay has done it for three quarters. We don't think he can do it again, and he didn't, and there's no one else to step up. Andrew Wiggins is still asleep, off the bench or starting. It's not realistic to think that some of these young guys, I mean, this is where Kuminga comes in. This is where Moody comes in. They're not the young players. They've been around here a few years. You've got to look to them, and they've got to try to be consistent in a fourth quarter, and they're just not ready to do it.
No, they're not ready to do it. It's Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson here on the sports leader, John Lund, of course, of Papa and Lund, 10 to 2, Monday through Friday here on KNBR, joining me here on the Dubs OT program as we get this thing moving. Warriors lose tonight, 121 to 113 to the Clippers, as Golden State now 10 and 14. Clippers going in the opposite direction, now 14 and 10, and the Clippers have won 6 in a row, going back to the Paul George shot. You know, that's the other thing that I think is a little demoralizing about these last couple of games. Paul George didn't play tonight for the Clippers, and they still scored at will on the Warriors. You know, defensively, and that's been the real issue in the non-Draymond games, and there's been far too many of them with the suspensions and the ejections and all of that. But the thing that's changed the most and changed the quickest when the Warriors haven't had Draymond Green is the defense. Just goes completely down the tubes. And now you got to score 120 to 130 a night. And I think that's where it gets tough, given the age. It's really the age and the youth. It's the age of Steph and Klay, and then it's the youth of some of the other players that are being asked to step in. But Harden did his thing and really took it over. Kawhi has been terrific in these last couple of games head-to-head. But it was Norm Powell and Amir Coffey. Norm Powell, 9 of 13 for 21, and Amir Coffey knocks down 4 3-pointers in this one. The Warriors just had no answer, and it's got to be demoralizing because the Warriors have been begging for multiple 20-point scorers, and you look at the Clippers, they get three guys go for 20, almost 4 if you count. But Coffey and Powell alone go for 39, and the Warriors just haven't been able to find any of that from guys that are basically their sixth and set. They can't get it from their second and third projected players, and the Clippers are getting it from their basically sixth and seventh.
Well, like you said, Coffey really early was killing them, and then Powell in the fourth quarter, and like you said, that's the difference here. Is that okay for 3 quarters? James Harden's carrying him, and Kawhi Leonard's carrying him, and then they need a closer in the fourth, and it's a guy like Norman Powell, who's done this before in the league with Toronto and Portland, and now he's played really well with the Clippers, that they've got veteran guys coming off the bench who have done it before. And the Warriors, if Curry doesn't have it on a certain night, and look, Steph's awesome, man, but he's 35, and there's going to be those nights, and they just put Kawhi Leonard on him, and that's a great matchup, always has been defensively. He's one of the few guys who can stop him. And again, looking at Klay through 3 quarters, and Steve may have to do some things that are completely unconventional to get him out of this. For example, I'm not ripping him for this, but he took Klay out at the 2:43 mark of the third quarter, and it's like NBA Jam. His hands are on fire. Man, just, you know what? Keep him in. He hasn't played well. He's finally on a hot streak. I get it, man. He's older. He's 33. But Klay Thompson hasn't been that red hot in a long time. Just let him play it out. I know that you've got these certain things in rotations, but you don't right now. So you know what? Let the guy cool off. Take him out of the game. That's not your normal rotation. I get it. But like you said, in desperate times, and you find yourself without Draymond Green in 11th place in the Western Conference scuffling, if Klay Thompson's hands are red hot, he's on fire, then just leave him in. And once he cools off, take him out. Rest him a little bit more on another game. He's got to do some unconventional things, which he's doing with the starting lineup, finishing lineup. Just right now, do it by feel. I don't care what the rotations are. You got to start winning games.
You do, and I think that's where the other thing that really the Warriors haven't been able to get right this year is the rotation. I think Steve Kerr's always sort of searching and he gives guys 3 or 4 games, and then he wants to mix it up. And what happens is I think he tinkers too much at the beginning of the year, and then what happens is you don't maximize when you're healthy. And then the injuries come, and then the injuries throw your rotation off. So you're always having this uphill climb as to figuring out who's going to play when and to try and keep everybody rested. And I think that contributes to the margin for error in a big way as well. And so you're right. I mean, yeah, Clay was smoking. Keep him out there. I'm with you on that. And if it means that he's got to take a rest in the beginning of the fourth quarter, then so be it. He gets a rest at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And if that ends up losing you the game, then you end up losing the game there. But at least you gave yourself a chance to stay in it, deeper in the ball game to that point. What did you think of the other thing I kind of threw out there in the opening monologue, which was you got Curry out there with Podziemski, Klay Thompson, Kuminga, and Looney. It looked like that was going to be the closing lineup. I thought maybe Moody could have found his way in for somebody. But again, the Warriors always find themselves in this position where there's 1 or 2 guys that the fans are going to want to have out there, and maybe even Steve Kerr wants to have out there, but it's who are you going to take off the floor. Podziemski was doing everything well except hitting a shot tonight, which is unfortunate. But you're also not going to put Moody in for Looney and play Kuminga at the 5. So I think at that point, then you're even more small. You're small even when Looney plays, so you're not taking him out of there. He went back to Chris Paul for Podziemski, and that's obviously going to be something that draws the ire of the fans when this team loses. It's just people want to see the young guys, and the patience wears thin. But they have too many established guys that are just going to be out there. And tonight, Clay was playing well and deserved to be out there. But again, this is another mark of a mediocre or a bad team when all of these guys are kind of different versions of the same, or at least playing at that level. And you find yourself every time when you lose looking around and going, well, you could have played that guy more and you could have played that guy more. Yeah. But it seemingly happens every single night, John, with different players, which I think is bigger picture an indicator that this team just overall talent-wise is not where they need to be.
Well, and you can tell by the frenzied play and the inconsistent play, and not only is it because some players are older and other players are too young, but remember when this whole thing started, let's harken back to, they could have traded for certain players and Harrison Barnes at the beginning and all this kind of stuff, and we preached before they even started winning championships with this group, that you wanted continuity, right? Continuity. The rest of the league is constantly changing things. These lineups haven't been on the court a whole lot. Now Draymond Green's gone along, and Steve is tinkering with it, like you said, and at this point he's just forced to. So a lot of times it's guys that you haven't even played with a lot. And then you look over at the Clippers, and Paul George isn't there tonight. But, I mean, they've had a lot of guys. And you mentioned Norman Powell, and Kawhi's been there a while, and Zubats. And, these guys kind of know what their roles are and what they're supposed to do. And right now, Podziemski is as good as he has been, and he's coming off some really good games. And I love the guy, but, he's a rookie, and he hasn't played with these guys. And Kuminga has got a bigger role right now. And Clay is trying to come to grips with his mortality. I mean, Looney isn't to this point of the season isn't what he was at the end. We're like, look at the Iron Man that is Looney, and he's awesome. And now, game in and game out, athletes are taking advantage of him. So it's young guys trying to find their foothold. It's old guys trying to realize that they're kind of mortal and what their new roles are and what they can do. And then there's Steph Curry is the only constant. It's just the continuity is not there, and they're running into these teams late in the game. And again, they were documenting this on TV a lot of just they're in these games, whether they're blowing out a team and blowing a lead, or tonight where they came back. They just can't put together a 4-quarter game. Now, some of it is these are really good teams, but a lot of times what it is these teams like Oklahoma City, for example, or Minnesota's now played together for a couple of years. Edwards is becoming a star, and Gobert has played with Towns, and Oklahoma City's been there. Now, I know that obviously Holmgren is new, but they're starting to get continuity and confidence on these teams, and they have clear roles of this is your superstar player, this is your Robin to your Batman, these are the guys that come in. That's extremely important in the NBA, to know your role, to have continuity, to have played together. That's what it is. These guys don't know when they're coming in, not when they're going. We don't know who the starters are. We don't know who the finishers are. And it's all based every single night on the eye test. Who's playing well? Will they get extra minutes? I mean, that's just not how it works in the NBA. It's a set thing. And by the 24th game of the season, you should have a general idea. But now that Draymond Green is gone, and you got to go on feel every single night on gut and not, could you imagine the Giants trying to do this? Like, they're just like, here's the computer, and the seventh inning you do this, and if this, then this. Like, their chess moves are already done. Steve Kerr is looking out on the floor, and the coaches are looking out on the floor going, if somebody's giving me something, I got to ride with him. If somebody stinks, I got to pull him out of the game quickly. That's not.
But then you also know Clay's always going to be out there, and Steph's always going to be out there. Like, there's certain guys that always have to be out there. So I think that makes it tougher.
Well, especially now, right? I mean, especially now because Draymond's gone. So the thought of Clay's not playing well, we got to pull him. I guess you could do that occasionally. But, for the most part, like you said, there's going to be a few guys like Chris Paul, for example. Chris Paul settles this team down. The turnover issues subside a little bit because he hasn't been a part of years and years of playing Harlem Globetrotter basketball, as Steve Kerr has said for a million years. Hit the singles. You don't always have to hit the home runs. So he's kind of a guy that will calm things down. He can take Steph off the ball so Steph can go off screens and hit shots. So, he gets guys easier shots. So he's going to be in the game. So those three are going to be in. Now your wild cards after that. Is Looney going to be in? Do you need size? Kuminga's athleticism against these more athletic teams. Moody you just mentioned. Podziemski could be a guy. I mean, there's 4 or 5 guys that could fill those final 2 roles with Draymond Green out, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to mix and match this thing. But the downside is that these guys haven't played together a lot, and the continuity are losing that to teams when for years that was one of your strengths.
All right, 808 KNBR is the number. It's Dubs OT with John Dickinson here on the Sports Leader. John Lund, kind enough to stop by here for a little bit. You cool coming back for another
absolutely,
shorty?
Man. I got nothing to do.
Yeah, well,
my wife doesn't want me going back inside.
No, not
she locked me out
this late.
No, she locked me out, man. It's like, coming back now.
Yeah, Lund's going to stick around. We will get to the YouTube chat as well. We got a lot of people with some great comments from the YouTube chat. 808 KNBR is the number as the Warriors drop another one. They lose to the Clippers 121-113. It's Dubs OT with JD on the Sports Leader.
This sucks.
Dubs OT with John Dickinson keeps rolling. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Yeah, I really liked our effort tonight. This team's been through a lot of late, and I liked the way they fought. I thought they really came together in the second half, played much better, defended without fouling, and took care of the ball and gave ourselves a chance. But, weren't able to win, but I like what I'm seeing, and I think this team is going to turn it around.
All right, Steve Kerr, a familiar refrain, although different key players. Warriors lose to the Clippers, 121-113 is the final. It's Dubs OT with John Dickinson here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader. 808-KNBR is the phone number to give us a call or shoot us a text. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open. Get to a couple of texts coming up here in just a moment. Great to have John Lund from Papa and Lund here 10 to 2 on the Sports Leader, Monday through Friday, joining me here for yet another segment as we break down this one, and the Warriors finding themselves now 4 games under 500. I've felt, Lund, like Steve Kerr's been trying to will things into existence. He's really tried to stay positive. I think part of that is a young group that he's trying to bring along, but then he also has some veterans that really are having to adjust to their game not quite looking, in the case of Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, like they expect it to be or are used to it being. So it's been real positive, trying to not have things slip into the abyss that was last year. But these last few days and the last few weeks have felt, unfortunately, an awful lot like last year, and the record would indicate similar at this point.
Yeah, and look, this time without Draymond Green is absolutely critical, and I know that over the last few days on KNBR we've talked a ton about Draymond Green, but the overriding picture and story of this whole thing is Joe Lacob is sitting here with a $400 million payroll plus taxes, and he's sitting in 11th place. And as generous as he's been in spending money and saying that I'll always spend money, I know this, and so do you, from years of doing this. Owners have no problem with it if they're in a championship window and they believe they can win a championship or contend for a championship. And they won one 2 years ago, and so everybody got really excited. But in professional sports, the cliff is fast. It's not often a gradual descent, and they're going downhill fast without Draymond Green. And the only reason I'm going to use this number is because this is what Mike Dunleavy said this afternoon when he was asked about it. He mentioned 15 to 20 games. Well, if it's 20 games without Draymond Green until he mentally gets right, then we're looking at probably the midway point of the season. I mean, we're looking at the middle of January. And if they are still sitting in the spot that they are, with the trade deadline being on February 8th, and they're playing at this level, if I'm Joe Lacob, I can't believe that he's going to continue to back this and spend this kind of money. And then, I don't know that Klay Thompson – I mean, Steph Curry's not on the table. I don't know that Klay Thompson is. I know Sam Amick wrote about this today in The Athletic. But they're at a critical juncture of keeping this team together. I really believe that. And, if Klay continues to struggle, they're going to have a decision to make. Shams Charania said that he turned down a 2-year, $48 million in that range deal. He's making over 40. That's a big-time pay cut. And, I think that's weighing on his mind and part of the reason he's struggling so much. But the Draymond thing puts a big cloud over this team, because if you're in 11th place – coming up on the trade deadline, which is a couple of weeks potentially before Draymond gets back. So is he going to be able to, right this ship when he gets back? Are they going to get righted because they're coming home and playing some lesser teams? If they don't start showing something pretty soon here, this team is going to have some hard decisions to make sooner than they thought they would.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and hear that clip from Mike Dunleavy Jr. He met with the media at the Warriors shoot-around to discuss the Draymond Green indefinite suspension. And, yeah, he laid out sort of the timeline for evaluating whether this team can get it done or not.
Yeah, I think so. We're committed to him. He's been here for a long time. He's hung a ton of banners and means so much to this organization. And like I said before, I think this is about turning this thing into a positive and getting better. And so I think that happens, and we feel really good because, again, his play has been terrific. It's just been his lack of availability that's not been great, and we want to make that better.
Yeah, so the 15 to 20 games, however long it winds up being, I thought that quote was also telling. It's just he hadn't been available enough. I mean, he has been a reliable player when he's played, but if you're not playing half the time, you're completely unreliable. So you just take that away, and that's where he's been. I think this thing is heading down a path where they're going to have to do something drastic. And I said that after Tuesday's game, and I think every loss, even though Steve Kerr can come on and try and put a positive spin on it given the circumstances, I think every loss in every game below 500, we're getting closer to the Warriors having to do something drastic if they're intent on trying to save it. But here's the flip side to that. If you're not intent on trying to save this season, and you say that you don't think this team has enough to get it done, and you want to kind of restructure things to a point where maybe you can save a little money that you're going to redistribute in different ways for future years, you also have to believe at that point that you have a good enough young core, or you can get a player or two that would fit into a young core that is good enough to be able to put alongside Steph Curry in short order to be, maybe not a title contending team, but at least a perennial playoff type team for a couple of years as Steph Curry winds his career down. And as much as everybody likes the young guys, and I get it, I thought Kuminga played pretty well tonight. Podziemski does a lot of really good things. Steve Kerr freaking loves the guy. Moses Moody, everybody loves and wants to see more of. Hell, Trace Jackson Davis, who didn't play well tonight, everybody wants to see what he can do. The reality, though, is for me, John, I don't think that this team – I don't think that the young core is good enough either. So when you say develop the young core, play the young core, like what's the ceiling for that young core? I don't think that it's a standalone next wave of – forget about title contender, but perennial playoff contending type team. And so I think that just compounds matters as you try to figure out which direction to go, because you want to either be contending for a title – or in a mode where you're developing young players that have high upside and ability to become future stars, or maybe a new second and third around Steph for the remaining years that he's playing at an extremely high level. And I just don't think the Warriors have either one right now.
I would agree. I mean, to me, Steph Curry is still playing at an all-star level, and this is really simplistic, but this is generally how NBA teams win championships. You have a superstar, you have a pretty good player next to him, and you have another guy next to him, and you have a big three. And then you have a bunch of role players who know what they're doing, and that's how championships have been won in the NBA over the last number of years. Well, Steph Curry can still be a 1A type of a star player. After that, where are you? Klay's a role player right now. Draymond's a role player right now. All these young players are role players right now. For them to, as you're talking about, and this is what a lot of the national media has been talking about too, they need to make a trade. They need to make a trade. They need to make a move. Well, the attractive players on this team are attractive players not because of how good they are, but because their contracts are expiring. Chris Paul's attractive because his contract's expiring. Klay, if Joe Lacob has the balls to move him, is attractive because his contract is expiring. He's still pretty good, but he's not going to be, a Robin to a Batman. I don't know. I think he's a high-end role player. And Kuminga and Moody, while nice players, have not shown that ability to step into those higher roles. And so, they had those opportunities with the second pick and what was Kuminga, 7, and Moody was a lottery pick as well. But it's those guys, like San Antonio extended their window because they ran into Kawhi Leonard in a trade with Indiana, and I think he was the 11th overall pick, something in that range. Where Klay was picked, it's hard to find guys at the end of the lottery that become Hall of Fame type players. You've got to get lucky. I mean, that's just the way. To me, and I don't want to be overly drastic because we're only 24 games in, but this is what the end looks like. The Bulls had an end, and the Celtics had an end, and all these teams have an end. And this is kind of where it's going. And I don't even know if they want to trade guys, if Joe really could say, God, I'm going to say goodbye to Klay, which I think would be very difficult for him to do. What's he going to get you at this point? What's Chris Paul going to get you? And if you trade one of those guys with an expiring contract, then you have to include Kuminga. Somebody's got to be high on Kuminga, right? Because that's the value as a young player. So, they've probably waited too long. And along with Draymond Green not being able to control himself, and Draymond, as you said earlier, you're 100% right. Draymond hasn't fallen off. It's just that Draymond's a front runner. Draymond's a winner. And so if Draymond's on a mediocre team, A, he loses interest, and B, he's just not as effective.
No, and I think that's the problem that they find themselves in is there's there's some guys that they like, there's other guys that aren't going to net them much, and then you start to look around and you want Kuminga to get his value up, but if Kuminga gets his value up, then it becomes a catch-22 because he starts to become the kind of young player that maybe he would want to build around.
That's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for him to fulfill what you see every once in a while with his athleticism. And then we talk about this all the time, and I've been listening to you on OT, and you're talking about the same thing. If you look at the Western Conference, Oklahoma City and their athleticism and the type of, the athletes that the Kings can throw on the floor across the table of the top teams in the Western Conference, he's a key player. I mean, we saw that against Portland a few games ago where he just, Steve looks down the bench and says, maybe you can give us a spark. And then he does because he's got that athletic ability. You could trade him, but the handful of guys of the names that we've heard for years, we hear the same guys every single year, the guys in Toronto, right? Or Miles Turner if you want some size. Or, we can go down the line to the same guys that we hear every single year. There's just not that guy around. And unless there's some loophole like when Kevin Durant came to the Warriors on July 4th years ago, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who's on a similar par as what Steph Curry is, and those guys just don't exist, and they're not going to exist for Chris Paul and Kuminga or Clay and Kuminga. They've probably waited too long. I respect the fact that Joe didn't want to break this thing up. There was no really reason to, and in 2022 when they win this thing, of course you're going to extend, you're going to give guys contracts. I don't blame him 1 second, but then now where they find themselves in this particular spot, like Bob Myers was lamenting the other day, Tyrese Halliburton, they weren't going to take him second overall. I didn't see anybody saying they were going to take. I know in that draft they liked him.
There were trade back options, though.
There were
trades at 4, 5, or 7, and you could have got a veteran player with them. And
So again, that was the move, right? If you had Tyrese Halliburton with Steph Curry, and at his age and his skill and what he's done, then now you're cooking with gas. But where they sit right now, it's going to – Mike Dunleavy's going to have to pull a rabbit out of a hat to pull this thing together, and I just don't see it. I think this is kind of what the end looks like, and it's going to be really difficult. We don't need to go to the end of the offseason and Clay and everything else. Let's just stay in the here and now. They've just got to hope they get on a hot streak, and winning and some lesser teams is the elixir. But it's going to be, to go back to the crux of what's happening right now, it's going to be really difficult. And people can say all they want about Draymond Green and how much they're sick of him and all this kind of stuff. When he plays in his career with the Warriors, they have a .670 winning percentage. When he doesn't, now they are .500. They were 63 and 62 going into tonight's game, playing without Draymond Green in his career. Now they are 63 and 63. So he makes a massive difference.
Yeah, and it's really fragile, I think, for this team right now, in addition to everything. Better vibes tonight, I thought, which is good. But, with every loss and when guys, the reason there were better vibes tonight was because usually Klay Thompson's part of the bad vibes, but tonight he was playing well, so he wasn't part of the right. But the next night, how do you know? It just feels like everything right now is really fragile for this team. They need some wins. They need some stability. But unfortunately, they're one injury away, and I hate to say it because it does skew negative when you start getting into it, but they're one, Steph or somebody has to miss 2-3 weeks even away from being in a really, really tough spot.
Yeah, so, I can't imagine. If Steph gets hurt, they're back to their 15 and 50 year. That's what they. That's what it is. Honestly, if Steph got hurt right now, like he did that year, what was it, a wrist? That would be it. They just don't have enough talent around them. And I don't blame the organization because when you're running hot like this and they won that championship in 22, you're not breaking your team up. You're gonna do what they did, which is they tried to start with, let's have 2 timelines. Clearly that didn't work. And then you say, okay, let's go all in on Steph and let's bring in Chris Paul. And that's back to the argument of Draymond Green, where the Warriors have enabled him to act this way, to say, look, I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to punch my teammate. You're going to kick that guy out of town because I want him to, and you're going to give me a $100 million contract. So, we've all talked about that for days, but now Draymond Green is not on the radar for a number of games, and this is the critical point of the season. And as I said, when he comes back, I don't know what the Warriors are going to look like, but I do know this. Joe Lacob is not going to pay this kind of these kind of dollars, I don't believe, for a team, as we started the segment with, that's hanging out partying with the Spurs, the Jazz, the Blazers, the Grizzlies. That's not what you're paying $400 million for.
Yeah, there's basically 3 tiers right now in each conference. You've got the top tier, that top 6 that make it. You've got that middle tier, which is where nobody really wants to be as far as the play-in type teams. And then you got the ne'er-do-wells. And right now the Warriors are leading.
Word.
They're leading the ne'er-do-well division, and yeah, that is not a pretty friend group for the Warriors to be in.
No, and that's how they break it up too. Like you look
tanking.
at it, they look at there's a line, like literally after the 10, there's a line,
and they're the first team of the group you don't want to be in.
I mean, seriously, if it was soccer, that's the teams that get kicked out the next year. I mean, it's just get down a level. It's just. I wouldn't have thought they'd have been down there at the beginning of the season when we were talking all about the Warriors. I thought they're going to bounce back. Chris Paul's going to be a good thing. Everybody said how kumbaya things were. Things are looking good. And then, Andrew Wiggins has disappeared to this point, didn't have much more energy tonight. And Dre did what Dre did, and Clay has struggled, and Curry's been the only constant. And while Podziemski's been a fun surprise at times, Kuminga has been very frustratingly, I should say, I sound like Porky Pig, frustratingly inconsistent, and that's just kind of what you're getting. And then, as you pointed out, maybe Moody on some nights. It's going to be really tough for Steve Kerr to, on the fly, coach this team and decide who comes, who goes. They're going to have a plan going in based on the personnel that they're playing on a specific night and what they think they may do. But because these guys are so inconsistent outside of Steph Curry, he's going to have to keep his eye on the game more than ever before and decide that guy just doesn't have it tonight. Does Wiggins have energy? Cool, he's going to get extra minutes. Is Clay hitting shots early like tonight, right? I mean, it's an 8-0 run, and it's all Clay Thompson, and you're going, okay, it's a Clay
24
night.
24 of his 30 in about 6 minutes of actual game action.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, it's a Clay night. He's going to play. He's going to play more. It's just that is a tough way to coach every single night in the NBA.
Well, John, I appreciate you spending some time with me tonight. I was going to keep you about 15 minutes, and I think we ended up doing about 40.
I got nothing to do. I got no life.
I appreciate it.
Oh, it's fun, man. I love catching up with you, man. It's the best. It's great to have you. By the way, it's great. For those who don't know JD, he and I started at the other station at the same time in 2011, and we've known each other for years, and I have an immense respect for what you do and what you've done, and it's awesome to have you back on the same team. I couldn't be more excited. You're so good at this. You're the best in the market. You're the best reporter around. You do these pre- and post-game shows better than anybody else, so it's really cool having you back on the same team.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, my friend, and I'm sitting in for you tomorrow, so I'll try to keep Pop in line, and then I'll talk to you in Arizona. I know you're going to be in Arizona, and I'll be in Arizona for the Niners and the Cardinals on Sunday as well. So looking forward to that, and I'll get to pop over and join you guys. So thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Good to talk to you, man. It's always great. Thanks. Have a great night.
All right, John Lund here on The Sports Leader, along with John Dickinson. It's Dubs OT with JD. Warriors lose to the Clippers, 121-113. 808 KNBR is the number. We'll get to the YouTube chat. We've been teasing it, but a lot of comments in the YouTube chat to get to. A couple of text messages as well. And Stephen Curry in L.A. down at Crypto.com Arena addressing the Draymond Green suspension. You're not going to want to miss that, as we will get you Steph's comments here as we keep things rolling. It's Dubs OT with John Dickinson on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
You're going to pay for that! Ah! You hit that guy!
He shouldn't have been standing there.
Back with more Blue and Gold. This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
So they were down 16. They're within 9. Doesn't start till Chris Paul touches it. He's got it now. He'll launch a 3. Good! Chris Paul hits the 3 to end the quarter. The key was never picking up the ball. That is the way to maximize 2.5 seconds, and a 16-point game becomes 6.
Yeah, 89-83, end of the third quarter, and the Warriors would cut the Clippers' lead that was 16 all the way down to 1. It was 103-102 with 8:51 to go, but not enough. The Clippers prevail over the Warriors tonight. 121-113 is the final. It's Dubs OT with John Dickinson here on The Sports Leader. 808 KNBR is the number, 808 KNBR, to give me a call or shoot me a text. Some texts coming up here, as well as everybody on YouTube and Twitch. Really appreciate the YouTube and Twitch following that we've had here in the early going of getting this program rolling on The Sports Leader. As promised, and Greg, I want to make sure we're lined up on this. As far as the Steph Curry sound, we had talked about Steph Curry, who's meeting with the media and just concluded that session down at Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles. So I do want to get to that Steph Curry sound right off the top here. So we'll go ahead and roll. Steph, who was asked about the last 48 hours and just being in a funk and everything else rolling along with everything that's been going on with Draymond and the suspension. Here's Steph Curry.
I mean, it's been tough. Obviously, trying to get our head on straight on the situation we're in, that he's in. Trying to focus, as a team on basketball and coming out performing and trying to, obviously win and get ourselves out of this funk. Didn't go our way tonight again. But, the big picture is nobody letting go of the rope, nobody trying to, have any type of panic. It's, for Draymond to, take care of himself. I know there's questions on what the suspension actually means time-wise and all that, and conversations we had yesterday were about him, personally, and making sure the focus is getting right, getting, on a path that's gonna, time-wise and all that, and conversations we had yesterday were about him, personally, and making sure the focus is getting right, getting, on a path that's gonna allow him to be who he needs to be as a person, as a man, father, husband, and a basketball player, in that order. And that's gonna, that journey is gonna be challenging, but we're all here to support him and try to hold it down while he's gone. So, it's a tough situation all the way around, but we are capable of getting through it, himself included.
All right, Steph Curry there, and sounding more and more when you look at some of the comments, and Mike Dunleavy Jr. earlier, Steve Kerr as well. We're going to play a little bit of Steve Kerr from the pregame. Even Joe Dumars, who's in the league office and in charge of handing out discipline and suspensions. The tenor of the Draymond Green suspension really feels more like a personal leave of absence than it does a suspension or a punishment. And I think that's a tone that the league and his teammates and the Warriors organization, it seems like collectively they've all gotten together on this thing. And yes, he's being punished, and it's an unpaid leave of absence when you're suspended. And with the indefinite timetable on it and everything, it is a little bit of a unique tone that I feel is being taken, given the circumstances and what happened with Nurkic, and going back a couple of weeks to what happened with Rudy Gobert and the Timberwolves and all of the other issues. I mean, Sabonis in the playoffs and getting ejected for the Donovan Mitchell, back and forth. I mean, that's really when everything started to go awry for the Warriors. If you look at when they came home, that beginning of that homestand at 6-3 after the 6-2 start. They lost in Denver on the 8th of November, and they come home and Draymond gets ejected, and all hell kind of breaks loose in two of those three games on that long homestand where the Warriors wound up 1-5 on the homestand, and they just haven't been able to right the ship since. But make no mistake, the Warriors need Draymond Green, and without him, this thing is as fragile as ever, even with the tone being that everybody is more supportive, I think, of Draymond trying to fix maybe some things that are going on with him personally that have led to some angry blow-ups on the court. And it's been much more supportive, I feel like, than angry. At least that's been the outward tone of things. Who knows what the conversations have been like, though, behind closed doors, as well as you look at everybody trying to process just where this latest incident and suspension has left the Warriors as far as trying to be the team that they believe they could be at the beginning of the year. Clearly are not that team right now, and really are not that team until proven otherwise. 808 KNBR is the number. 808 KNBR. We'll hear another Steph cut here in just a second on the Sports Leader. It's Dubs OT with JD John Dickinson here on 104.5 and 680. Also on YouTube and Twitch as well. I do want to get a quick look at the text line, the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line here on the Sports Leader. And just a couple of messages to get to. 408 chiming in. JD, felt like to me the game was lost in the first half. A lot of poor defense. Clippers did a nice job with defending the interior. 9 blocks, which is the key stat of the game. I think that's a good call. Really appreciate it. Good call. I do think the Warriors lost this game in the first half. Really in the second quarter, I think, is where the Warriors lost this game. When you look at the overall 40-28, I mean, you lose by 8, you get kind of run out 40-28 in that quarter. That to me is where the Warriors lost it. They found themselves down 13 going in at halftime, and then I think the third quarter as well, the Warriors didn't make the most of Klay Thompson's hot stretch in that third quarter. But yeah, no, it was the turnovers and the fouls in particular in the first quarter. It set a bad tone. The defense was never really there tonight, to where even when the offense got rolling, the Warriors couldn't get enough stops rather. 808 KNBR, another one to get to. Another one to get to. Just 415 sending some positive vibes to JD and Johnny Lund here. So I appreciate the cheers there. via the text line. Again, the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line here on the Sports Leader. We'll get to the YouTube chat in just a moment, but I do want to get back to the Steph Curry sound and the second cut that we were going to play, because the whole tone of this, as we were just talking about, has been support. And Stephen Curry continued that tone in this cut here.
Just to be support, like, I don't necessarily know what, I don't know, like the program or the requirements or the things that he needs to do. But I'm here as a friend and a support to kind of lean in on being there for him, whatever that means. Yesterday was a conversation for us as a team to understand, where we currently are, where we're trying to go, and holding each other accountable, holding Draymond accountable to, what's been going on and what needs to change for, us to be right as a team. Like I said, with him involved in that, but every day is a new challenge, literally, and that's going to be something that we have to, be able to be support for him.
All right, so Stephen Curry supporting Draymond Green, and I find that interesting only in that when you look at some of the conversation surrounding Steph the last couple of days, it had devolved into really basically some calling Stephen Curry an enabler, essentially, for Draymond Green's behavior, and that wasn't the tone that was taken by any means on this show, but it was a tone that was taken, Stephen A. Smith, point blank. I mean, he came out and really kind of flamed Steph Curry for enabling and I think by extension of wanting to run it back. And look, I think, to me, you can't put that on Steph. You can say Steph wanted this core group back, but there's no way in hell Steph Curry was signing up for what has happened to this point in these first 24 games. I think he thought that there was a lot less fragility and a lot more stability for this team. But the one thing I will say, and I don't put this on Steph, but I do put, if you do want to have the enabler conversation, it's the Warriors organization. And like I said the other night, as we were discussing it in the aftermath of the game in Phoenix, and when everything happened with Nurkic and just a couple of weeks after everything had happened with Rudy Gobert, the truth is, the reality is, it goes back to 2016. Like the Warriors reached a point of no return with Draymond Green in 2016 when he had the shouting match with Steve Kerr in Oklahoma City, and Lisa Salters on the ABC Saturday Night Showcase broadcast caught it and reported on it, and the Warriors were getting smoked in that game, and then they came back and Curry hit the bang, bang shot at the end, and they ended up, I think, walking out of that building, don't quote me on this, I think they were 50-5 or something like that at the end of that night. I might be off by a game or two. But and rather than discipline Draymond, they just went all in on the fact that lit their fire for the rest of that game and for the rest of that season when they were 73-9 and went to the finals, and then look what happened. Draymond finds himself in a position where he gets suspended in a Game 5, and some of the things that went down with Kevin Durant, and of course the Steven Adams and LeBron James, part of that 2016 with the. So, I mean, there's been a lot of different incidents, the Jordan Poole punch. But to me, the Warriors let this thing get away back in 2016. And it was an organizational decision to roll with it in that vein. So it did lead to mainly Stephen A. Smith coming after Steph Curry. Well, Steve Kerr took up for Steph Curry during his pregame press conference. Here's the head coach.
Part of all of this is just the climate we live in and the arrows that are, slung at these guys, and the judgment, the criticism. That's fine, but it's part of it, and it's not easy. We're all human beings, and so that's a big part of the job these days as a professional athlete. You have to deal with everything, and you have to accept it, but there are times when you kind of have to say, really? Like, that's the angle you're going to take? You're going to question Steph Curry's leadership? Like, really? We're going to do that? Think about that. Think about that. Okay, so that's all I got.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, it when you look at the guy that's really held the whole thing together for the Warriors over the years, and going back to predating Joe Lacob, predating Bob Myers, predating Jerry West, predating Klay Thompson, and just being able to become the face and this great champion of this franchise that was so downtrodden before his arrival, with everybody else coming into the mix and winning the titles that they were able to win and competing at the high level. I mean, it really – and the reason that it's all worked – and I know there's been a lot of drama at times, and there's been a lot of drama. There was a ton of drama last year. There's been more drama than I think anybody would have anticipated this soon this season. There was drama in the KD final year, although you could make the case that Durant hijacked that year in many ways. There's been drama along the way, but the truth is, and when you look around at the rest of the NBA, most other franchises can't hold their mud and keep it together at the level that the Warriors have been able to do it. And a big part of the reason why, really the only reason, is Steph Curry and his humility and his personality and his leadership. So if you want to blame the Warriors organization for enabling Draymond Green going back 6-7 years, I think that's a fair conversation to have. I wouldn't put it on Steph Curry by any stretch. 808 KNBR is the number, 808 KNBR. We'll go ahead and pause here, and we'll come back, and we'll hear a little bit more from Steve Kerr. We'll hear from Joe Dumars, who addressed the Draymond Green suspension as well, and we'll get some of the best YouTube comments of the night before we call it a night as the Warriors lose to the Clippers, 121-113. It's Dubs OT with John Dickinson on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Hoops Heads, Dubs OT with John Dickinson keeps ballin'. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Looney wanted Pajemski to cut, threw it away. A 2-on-1, and Leonard finishes it off.
They're just having fun with it. These turnovers been the Warriors' Achilles heel. 8 turnovers now for 11 Clipper points.
Setting up Steph for 3. Oh, Pajemski the rebound. Curry reload.
Hey, find Klay
Kuminga. And Coffey just took it from him. 2 missed threes, and Kawhi will dunk it down.
That is a rough sequence. I thought for sure the Warriors were going to find Klay Thompson.
Yeah, couldn't find Klay Thompson, and it was a rough shooting night for Stephen Curry. 3 of 13 from 3. The Clippers shut him out from the field in the fourth quarter. He ends up with 17. Warriors lose by 8, a game they trailed by as many as 16, cut all the way down to 1. And they lose on a night where Klay Thompson winds up going for a season-high 30 on 9 of 15 and 8 of 12 from 3. We welcome you back. It's Dubs OT with JD here on The Sports Leader. Warriors now 10 and 14 on the season. Couple of Clippers had season highs tonight. I bet you can guess. Norm Powell, 21. Amir Coffey, who really hurt the Warriors in the first half with 18. You couple that with Harden's 28 and 15 assists. Kawhi Leonard was really good, 27 and 8, and kind of got whatever he wanted whenever he wanted. And the Warriors unable to get the big, tonight's a night where you look at Wiggins, who really went to the bench and I think was a pro about going to the bench. I know Steve Kerr said that in his post-game press conference. But Wiggins wasn't real great tonight by any stretch. Kuminga I thought was pretty good. Pajemski was pretty good except for the 2 of 11, which is not nothing in 35 minutes. If you're going to be a starting player, you got to be able to knock down some shots. So unfortunately, the Warriors end up shooting 43.5% in this one, and they end up losing it by 8. And, if they could have gotten a normal Steph Curry game, maybe they wind up coming from 16 down and winning it. But that's been the story of this Warrior season to this point. It's just been something different on a night-in and night-out basis. And, you want to get into a couple of little notes here as far as Crypto.com/Staples Center. The Warriors have really struggled in that building when you look at the recent history. Now, 8 consecutive regular season losses the Warriors have had down at Crypto.com/Staples Center to the Clippers and the Lakers. You add the 3 in the playoffs, and it's 11 straight in favor of the Lakers and Clippers in that building. 13 of the last 15 the Warriors have lost down there as well, and haven't won since November 28th of 2 years ago. So it's been 2 years with all of those games in the playoff series. Clippers get the better of the Warriors in 2 of the first 3 head-to-head matchups after the Warriors had won. These teams playing for the 3rd time here in basically what amounts to 2 weeks, 15 days. And the Clippers now with the 2-1 series edge after they rallied from 22 down. The last time these two teams played, the 4th and final meeting of the regular season series, is on February 14th at Chase Center. The Clippers, again, 5 in a row now, head-to-head at home. We talked earlier about the 10th different starting lineup for the Warriors. It was also the 20th clutch game of the season for the Warriors. Games decided in the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter or overtime. Score within 5 points. Warriors now 9-11 in those 20 clutch games. It feels like it's worse, to be perfectly honest. It feels like it's worse than 9-11 in the 20 clutch games. But the Warriors dipping now to 10-14, and the Warriors reserves did outscore the Clippers reserves, even though a couple of reserves became starters in this game tonight. That's 20 of 24 games this season where the Warriors bench has outscored the opponent's bench, which is good news. Season high for Klay Thompson. Stephen Curry, rough night for him. Brandon Pajemski, his first career start, and had a team-high tying 7 rebounds to go with a couple of assists, a block, and a career-high tying 3 steals. But again, couldn't knock down enough shots. Unfortunately, if the Warriors had had a little bit more from Steph, a little bit more from Podziemski, a little bit more maybe from Wiggins or Saric off the bench offensively, and I think they would have been able to maybe eke out a win. But then you look at the Clippers really had their way, and I think that the concern, as we were talking about with John Lund, the concern for the Warriors without Draymond Green is their defense immediately goes into the crapper. And it happened during the suspension on the homestand. And, this team really has played okay defense since Draymond returned from that suspension. But they were actually playing really good defense the first 9 games. And then when Draymond went down, it really went to hell. And they haven't been able, I think, because they've had players in and out of the lineup and rotation switches and all of those different things to be able to get it back on track from that point. But I would be concerned that this team's going to start giving up a lot of points at a rapid rate in a lot of games, and that's just going to put the pressure on the offense to have to be able to score in the 115 to 120s on a night-in, night-out basis. And this Warriors team, as it's currently constituted, I'm not sure they have that kind of firepower with the lineup changes and obviously Draymond's impact on both sides of the ball. But the opportunity is in front of the Warriors when you look at what's coming up and all the home games and some games coming up against easier opponents, although Brooklyn is a team that still is having a better season, at least to this point, than the Warriors are at 13-11 currently, although they got ran out in Denver after losing to Sacramento. And Brooklyn is now struggling a little bit after they were able to beat Utah, I think, a couple of nights ago. So Brooklyn finds themselves in a position. I guess they beat Phoenix, I guess it was. So Brooklyn out here to wrap up that road trip on Saturday, and the Warriors are going to have to try and get things rolling against them. And then Portland after that, and as the Warriors continue to move through the next week, you get the Celtics at Chase. That's no picnic. The Wizards, that's an absolute must-have. You get the Wizards and Blazers back-to-back. So you really look now at the next week plus. And if you can get the Brooklyn game, you got to get the Brooklyn game in both Portland games. You have to get the Wizards game, and then you take your chances with the Celtics. I mean, nothing is a guarantee for this Warriors team right now. Nothing is a guarantee, especially shorthanded. But I'm looking at the next week and a half, really in the lead up to Christmas, and it's 5 games over the course of what are going to be 8 nights. And you really need to go 4-1. And 4-1 is going to put you still 14-15 going into Christmas and the date with the Denver Nuggets. But that's the unfortunate position the Warriors have earned with how poorly they've played. All right, let's get to a couple of cuts here. Do want to get back into the Draymond Green suspension as it was addressed on many levels, and we heard from Steph Curry in the aftermath down in Los Angeles. Let's go ahead and hear from Joe Dumars, the man in charge of handing out the discipline in the league office, as he joined. Was it First Take that he joined? But anyway, he gave his thoughts on why the suspension and explained the indefinite nature of Draymond's suspension.
A lot of times people get caught up into like a number, like what's the number? And we didn't want to do that. What we wanted to do was, first of all, we knew that there would be some level of punishment, but we didn't want that to be the focus. We wanted the focus to be on how can we help Draymond as well. And we thought indefinite was the best way to do that. So people don't get caught up on here, what's the number? Is it too low? Is it too high? Indefinite means get yourself right. We want to see you at your best. And the best way for you to do that is to get yourself mentally and emotionally back to where you need to be. And so that's how we got to indefinite.
All right, so the explanation there, not wanting there to be this heated debate whether it's too short or too long, give Draymond the opportunity to work on whatever he needs to work through. It's definitely going to be a significant amount. I mean, I would imagine it's probably going to be at least 10 games, probably more. I wouldn't anticipate we see Draymond Green again in 2023, but that remains to be seen. And as long as he's checking the appropriate boxes within the league office, then they'll sign off on a return. I also think there was a real focus in this on really trying to, I think, calm down the situation, calm down the debate, calm down the just kind of allow everyone to take a deep breath and almost free themselves a little bit from the weight that Draymond has kind of carried around. And so I think that was the explanation. But also indefinite is still probably going to be an extension of what the suspensions had been in recent memory that Draymond has had. Obviously the one for the Sabonis incident in the playoffs, and then the 5 for the prior incidents and what was going on with Gobert. This will almost certainly be more than 5. Here's what Steve Kerr had to say about Draymond Green's suspension before the game. As we'll roll this. This was before the Warriors-Clippers game tonight.
This is not just about, an outburst on the court. This is about his life. This is about someone who I believe in, someone who I have known for a decade, who I love for his loyalty, his commitment, his passion, his love for his teammates, his friends, his family. I'm trying to help that guy because the one who grabbed Rudy, choked Rudy, the one who took a wild flail at Yusuf, the one who punched Jordan last year, that's the guy who has to change. And he knows that. Everything before that, over a decade of play, what are we really talking about, right? We're talking about, getting ejected for yelling at the ref or throwing a ball. But you look at the past year and what's happened, it's clear he needs the opportunity to change, and that's what an indefinite suspension gives him the opportunity for.
Yeah, he gets the opportunity to change, and again, maybe a little bit of a breath of fresh air to kind of clear the head, but it has to change, and that's been the one thing that's been proven to be true on the negative side is Draymond really hasn't taken the opportunity to change in some of these other instances. In fact, in a lot of them, he's been defiant, and so I think he can say, and as we get to the YouTube chat, and San Jose Jazz fan, one of the regulars, chiming in, and I was going to read a couple of these. It's breaking news. Draymond knows he has to change. I mean, how many times have we heard that? I mean, it's exactly. And, also adding in Draymond's previous apologies, he said his behavior has gotten him to where he is, all the success he's had, and he's not going to change. So now Draymond knows he has to change. So we'll see. I mean, I think that is a fair distinction between the two. He has been more defiant in other instances, but those around him have been adamant that he has to change. And so, that refrain has been similar, but you're right, San Jose Jazz fan, the third, that he, has, it really is a different tone that's been taken, I think, to this one. I did want to get to Hannah M., who chimed in with the take on Stephen Curry and questioning the leadership. I wanted to get Hannah M's comment. God forbid you call out a leader for not holding a teammate accountable publicly. Sure is working, the tone. And look, everybody leads in a different way. Everybody leads in a different way. Steph is not a call a guy out publicly. Now, I think that's different from acknowledging what he acknowledged here. Like, and I do think there's there's a kinship between Steph and Draymond and Klay Thompson and everyone to where, Steph's not going to publicly flame him when he was a guy that wanted him back. And that doesn't mean Steph enabled or signed up for what's happened this season, but he wanted Draymond back. So I think that makes it a lot more difficult to be in a position where he is going to just start calling him out publicly. Calling him out privately to me is more important. But the fact that he doesn't call him out publicly does not mean that he's not a leader. SG Sports Talk channel in the YouTube chat. Draymond Green is a massive liability to the Golden State Warriors after he got ejected and punched Yusuf Nurkic in the face. I mean, look, he's absolutely, to get to the second part of this, has to take control of his actions. There's no doubt. He has to get his behavior in check. Can he? I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it with Draymond Green, but the only chance that this Warriors team is going to have to do anything is if Draymond can somehow get his act together. That's really all it boils down to is having to, that's their only shot. Only shot. A couple other comments. Enrique Rivera, always appreciate you. Draymond got to go. Gotta go. Bye-bye. We also had Draymond Green in the chat tonight as well. Somebody who actually their screen name was Draymond Green, daring that I wouldn't say pop in and talk about them. Appreciate it. Enrique Rivera, a few good comments. Looks like Warriors are going back to a losing culture. Good news, lottery pick for the Warriors? Lottery pick? I don't think that's good news. Because the one thing, I mean, at this point, if you're focusing on a lottery pick, given the way that the Warriors have made lottery picks in recent memory, then it's a situation where you're really going to have to you're tearing the whole thing down to the studs if you're focusing on a lottery pick for next year. That's the simplest way to put it. All right, we'll call it a night on that note. Appreciate everybody on the YouTube stream and the Twitch stream. Big thanks to Greg Silver. Big thanks to the great Raph as well for helping out. Big thanks to everybody who listened and participated in the program. I'm John Dickinson. We'll be back following Saturday. Warriors and Brooklyn, around 8 o'clock, Dubs OT with JD as the Warriors will try and get back to their winning ways. We'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. It's Dubs OT with JD on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
John Dickinson. You hit that guy.
He shouldn't have been standing there.
Curry again from way downtown.
We're going to be championship.
This